Even for a nation as young as ours, and even for a party like ours that thinks always of the future, nostalgia is a powerful force. It is only natural that many parallels would be made between this year and this convention and a convention that occurred 28 years ago in Los Angeles in 1960 that set off the new frontier, the Kennedy-Johnson years, those lilting happy days when we began to look forward and believe that America could do anything. And for a few years, we did. Join me now as I bring to this podium a young man whom we all clasp to our hearts and whom we will love today as we have in the past, and whom we'll come to love in the future, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Jr.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over a quarter century ago, my father stood before you to accept the nomination for the presidency of the United States. So many of you came into public service because of him. In a very real sense, because of you, he is with us still. And for that, I'm grateful to all of you. I owe a special debt to the man his nephews and nieces call Teddy. Not just because of what he means to me personally, but because of the causes he has carried on. He has shown that an unwavering commitment to the poor, to the elderly, to those without hope, regardless of fashion or convention, is the greatest reward of public service. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not a political leader, but I can speak for those of my age who have been inspired by Teddy to give their energy and their ideas to their community and not just to themselves. Thank you. Thank you. In that ongoing effort, young people, and not only the young, but all like-minded citizens, all of you, will be guided by the honorable and unyielding example of the senior senator from Massachusetts. Thank you. He has shown that our hope is not lost idealism, but a realistic possibility. America is better because of the leadership of Edward Kennedy. Thank you. May he continue to guide us for many years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, my uncle, Ted Kennedy.
Thank you, John, for that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, John, for that moving introduction. Thank you. Thank you. And for the joy you have given our family over the years. Thank you. Tonight you have given something special to this convention and this country. You have touched deep chords of memory and hope in Democrats and Americans everywhere, and you remind us that we are at our best when we have a president who asks each of us what we can do for our country. For a long time, I have believed that what this country needs is another president from Massachusetts. And now it's going to happen. President Dukakis, it has a nice ring, doesn't it? Some people say, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Well, the Republicans have already hatched their chicken in this campaign, and George Bush is a dead duck. And that doesn't even count all the other chickens they've hatched in the past 8 years that are coming home to roost on Election Day this November. We know who and what we are running against. We know them by their names and by their deeds. They are the party of Ed Meese and Robert Bork. They are the party of Iran Gate, Contra Gate, Pentagon Gate. And they are the party that tolerates apartheid abroad and retreats from civil rights here at home. They are the party that talks tough on drugs, but deals softly with drug-running dictators. We have heard the slogan, just say no. The problem is our Republican opponents just couldn't say no to General Noriega. As Democrats, we know who we are and where we stand and what we seek. We are the diversity of America, committed to the ideal that all of us can advance together and none shall be left behind. We are the party of change, and across the generations we have seen what our country can become. We have never been willing to stand on the sidelines of history, whether the issue was war or peace, equality or justice. We have been at the center of the struggle, and sometimes we have known our setbacks and paid a political price. We lost some elections, but we never lost our soul. And now we know that the struggle has made us stronger, and this country is ready to move again, and we are ready to lead. We are strengthened by a vigorous and honorable primary campaign. We are strengthened by an extraordinary group of candidates who this spring made all of us proud to be Democrats. We are strengthened by the example and the eloquence of one of the most talented individuals in this nation, one whose life and words alike give new meaning to our oldest ideals. He stands for freedom and compassion, and his effort makes all of us prouder than ever to be Americans, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. most of all, we are strengthened because we will enter this campaign as the party of hope, the party of both confidence and concern, the party of Mike Dukakis and Lloyd Bentsen. I know Mike Dukakis. I know his decency and his talent. I know his spirit. He cares about making government work because he cares deeply about people. I have seen the presidency up close, and I have seldom seen anyone as matched to the demands and possibilities of that office as Mike Dukakis. Yes, I know Mike Dukakis and Lloyd Bentsen as friends, and I admire them as leaders. I have faith in them, faith in Jesse Jackson. We have a job to do together. And if all of us are together, we shall not fail. There is a continuity between the Dukakis-Bentsen ticket of 1988 and the Kennedy-Johnson ticket of 1960. It is a continuity of commitment and not just geography. For Mike Dukakis and Lloyd Bentsen, like John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, believe that we cannot be content with things as they are, that there is a newer frontier to be crossed and a greater society to be built. After 8 years of complacency and indifference, of problems untended and pains untreated, it is time to restore purpose and principle to America. From Atlanta to Seattle, from Houston to Boston, everywhere in our land there are men and women willing to work who deserve a chance to work. There are children to be taught, families to be housed, farms to be saved, diseases to be cured, hungry to be fed, homeless to be cared for, and justice to be done. And in the larger world, from the Persian Gulf to Central America, from the Soviet Union to South Africa, there are wars to be halted, arms to be reduced, families to be united, human rights to be defended, and apartheid to be ended. President Reagan deserves credit for the Moscow summit, but I wish that just once this president would speak as forcefully for civil rights in the United States as he does for human rights in the Soviet Union. But at least Ronald Reagan accepts the blame as well as the credit for the policies of the past 8 years. He comes without excuses and equivocation. He stands up, looks us in the eye. But not George Bush, who on question after question keeps burying his head in his hands and hiding from the record of the Reagan-Bush mistakes. The vice president says he wasn't there, or can't recall, or never heard, as the administration secretly plotted to sell arms to Iran. So when that monumental mistake was being made, I think it is fair to ask, where was George? The vice president says he never saw, or can't remember, or did not comprehend the intelligence report on General Noriega's involvement in the cocaine cartel. So when that report was being prepared and discussed, I think it's fair to ask, where was George? The vice president claims he cares about the elderly, but evidently he didn't know or wasn't there when the administration tried repeatedly to slash Social Security and Medicare. So when those decisions were being made, I think it's fair to ask, Where was George? And the Vice President, who now speaks fervently of civil rights, apparently wasn't around or didn't quite hear when the administration was planning to weaken voting rights, give tax breaks to segregated schools, and veto the Civil Rights Restoration Act. So when all those assaults were being mounted, I think it's fair to ask, where was George? In fact, the Vice President, where was George? Where was George? Where was? We all know the answer to all these questions. George Bush is the man who is never there. And he won't be there after the clock strikes noon on January 20th, 1989. His only major economic proposal is a wonderfully Republican idea to cut the capital gains tax for the rich. That may be good for his friends who clip coupons, but the hard-working taxpayers of this country cannot afford to be clipped again by another round of voodoo economics. I wonder who coined that phrase. America needs more shelters for the homeless, not more tax shelters for the privileged. America needs more affordable housing for the middle class, not more tax breaks for the upper class. America needs to bring the disabled into the mainstream and not relegate whole groups of our people to the backwaters of our economy. The next administration must do more than provide comfort for the comfortable, and the next president must offer more than a pale imitation of a Reaganism whose time has faded. A new century is dawning. The old order is changing. We must look beyond the next election to the horizon of the next generation, and there is no one better matched to the challenge than Mike Dukakis. He saw the future coming in Massachusetts. He led the transition from a faltering 1950s economy to a modern economy at the cutting edge of change. Mike Dukakis is the man who did it for Massachusetts, and Mike Dukakis is the man who is going to do it for the United States of America. George Bush may want to lower the capital gains tax, but Mike Dukakis will repeal the corruption tax we are all paying in the form of defense cost overruns and a Pentagon bribery scandal that has bloated the budget by billions of dollars. So let's not raise taxes on average income families. Let's lower the boom on high-level corruption. The years ahead can be a bad time or the best of times. The problem today is not America's people, but America's leadership. Our people know the difference between right and wrong. We all see the faces pressed against the windows of our affluence, and we wonder now whether our children will be consigned to a lesser life in a lesser land. We cannot be satisfied to see American students rank 15th among the industrial nations in science and math. We must strengthen education, not attack it. We must abolish illiteracy, not abide it. And we must invest in star schools here on earth, not Star Wars in the heavens. And we must heed the message of Jesse Jackson. We must banish drugs from our classrooms, from our playgrounds, from the streets of our cities, and from everywhere in our nation. We must make America once again the best educated society in the world. We must see to it that in the 1990s, young Americans won't just go to school, they will learn in school. At the same time, we must respond to the human realities of a day as distant from the New Deal as that era was from the age of the horse and buggy. Today, when more than 50% of mothers work, including half of those with children under the age of 1, it is a national disgrace that we have failed to secure basic child care for working parents. No mother who wants to work or has to work should have to fear for the health or safety of her child when she is on the job. Nor shall we ever consent to the permanent division of our nation into 3 societies, one doing well, a second barely holding on, the third trapped decade after decade in hopelessness, anger, and violence. All this and more will be decided at the desk of the next president. A world transformed takes many different forms. There are dangers and other challenges, but there is one of which I finally speak, and which must be one of the first priorities of the next administration. All my public life, I have fought my heart out for the principle that the state of a family's health should never be determined by the size of a family's wealth. And I stand here this evening and tell you that at long last victory is within our grasp. The first critical step has already been taken this year in Massachusetts. Governor Dukakis passed comprehensive, cost-effective access to medical care for every citizen of our state. And next year in Washington, President Dukakis will wage and win the battle to secure decent health care for all the people of our nation. I will be standing there with him in the forefront of that battle, because America should not be the only industrial nation on earth, except for South Africa, that ensures the health of its politicians, but not its people. In closing, let me pledge every resource of mind and spirit that I have to the success of our cause in 1988. You and I have stood together many times, but no time has been more important than this. The campaign that stretches before us now is a struggle for the soul and the future of America. For we are more than a political coalition, more than a collection of programs, more than the sum of our prospects and our strategies. Most of all, we are the trustees of a dream. 20 years ago, in 1968, we lost 2 of the most powerful voices of that dream. But they left us their vision, their values, and the hopes they awakened in the countless millions of people whose hearts they touched. We remember them now to remind ourselves that the American journey is unfinished, that we stand for change in order to march again towards enduring ideals, that we do not have to settle for things as they are. Martin Luther King Jr. told us something we need to hear anew. He said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now in the unfolding life and history. There is such a thing as being too late." And Dr. King also said, "We must work unceasingly to lift this nation to a higher destiny, to a new plateau of compassion." And in that time there was another voice, only briefly heard, but whose words too have outlasted all the loss and years. Robert Kennedy said, "Each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." He was my brother, but he and Dr. King were also, in the deepest sense, brothers to us all. These two, these valiant two, lived for the same dream and were gone only months apart. And if they were here with us 2 decades later, I think I know what they would say. Now is the time. Some men see things as they are and say, "Why?" We dream things that never were and say, "Why not?" Now is the time.